Good morning, everybody. Welcome. It's good to see you all here virtually, if not in person. My name is Gavin Smart. I'm Chief Exec of CIH. It's my job to kick us off today. What I'm hoping to do in this session is just to speak to you for about 15, 20 minutes, give you a sense of where we are, how we're doing, what some of the things that I think are going on, talk to you a little bit about our work at the moment, and then maybe just sketch out some ideas of where I think we can go in the future. And I hope that then there'll be time for a little bit of chat, a bit of Q&A at the end of the session. As the video said, when we're doing that, if you can please use the Q&A, then I can try and keep an eye on the questions you're asking. And ideally, through the magic of television, I'd like to invite some of you up onto stage as well. And I may ask some of my colleagues to answer some of the questions that were asked as well. So, as I say, I'm going to just run through a little bit of a kind of stock take of where we are. And in doing that, I'm going to show you just some slides, which I hope you will all be able to see. And they're partly there to keep me disciplined, keep me on time, partly there to give you something to look at if you get bored looking at me. So here we go. These are things that I want to talk to you about today. I'm going to just give you some thoughts about my first 10 months as CEO. As you might imagine, it's not gone exactly as I thought it might, if you'd have asked me this time last year. A bit of an update about where we are. I know you'll want to know about the money because it's a difficult environment for lots of organisations, and we're not excluded from that, but I can show you where we are and how we're doing. A little bit about each of the three key things that CIH is here for. We're here for our members, we're here to educate, train, qualify the profession, we're here to be the public voice of housing, our policy work, and then just to look a little bit further ahead as well, where we might go, the sort of things that we might do next, which I hope you will all think are all moves in the right direction, but really interested in your feedback on that too. But first of all, before I go any further, actually one of the most important things for me to do today is to thank you all, because I'm really conscious that everybody in this virtual room today, you really are all the volunteers that make CIH work. CIH doesn't work without you as the volunteer body, without people on the governing board, on the regional groups, on the national committees, the policy advisory committee, professional standards committee, all of the different committees, all the different groups, all filled up with volunteers. You are the people that make CIH tick on the ground, and that's incredibly important, and I'm very grateful to you all. Some of you may have seen the speech that I gave at the Virtual Housing Festival, the Virtual Manchester, where I talked about the fact that actually when I was growing up, my parents were both members of their professional body. They were med lab scientists, so a very different profession, but I saw the benefits that they got from being members of a professional body, not only in terms of professional development, but in terms of the networks and the friendships that they made, which often lasted a lifetime. But I also saw the work that they did behind the scenes as my dad eventually became president of this professional body, the amount of work they put in as volunteers to make things happen. And I know that's what happens at CIH as well. So if you only remember one thing that I say to you today, thank you for everything you do. Please keep doing it. Okay, so my reflections on the first 10 months. It's not what I expected. I don't think any of us thought probably that within 2 months of taking up the job, I'd be with all my colleagues trying to work out, so how does CIH work in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a lockdown? What does it mean for us? How do we do our job? How do all of you do your jobs? How do we support you to do the work you do and support your organisations? So it's been a pretty intense, pretty tough period, but it's been rewarding as well at times. And as I think you might have heard me say before, you don't choose the hand you're dealt with. You need to get on with it, and that's what we've tried to do. We've tried to plan for the kind of a reasonable worst case scenario, and then we focused all of our efforts on trying to do better than that reasonable worst case scenario. And why have we done that? Well, because actually the pandemic, I think, if it has done anything at all, I think all it's really done is reinforce the sense that our purpose at CIH matters, because the work of you as housing professionals matter. We say that our job is to support housing professionals to create a future in which everybody has a place to call home. I don't think we've changed our mind about that. We saw the height of the pandemic, at the height of lockdown, just how important home is. As Aileen, our president, often says, home is where we start from, and the work that you do and the work that I like to think we support you to do is all about home and creating home for everybody, not just some people. So despite all of the kind of the trials and all of the challenges we faced in the last period, that is an incredibly motivating purpose to be working towards, and I think has helped to see us through. I think we are a good organisation. There is a lot of stuff about CIH that is good. We're not great yet. We have the potential to be great, and my colleagues and I are all working towards that goal, and we're working with you towards that goal. Like everybody, I'm sure the same as each of you in your jobs, you can always see things that you think should be better. My commitment to you is that we're looking very hard at the things that we think can be better, and we're working very hard to get there and to improve it. Really good news is that we did weather at least the initial COVID storm. I'll say more about what that looked like in terms of the money in a minute, but we are standing, and we are more than standing. We've put ourselves in a good place in terms of our resilience as an organisation, and most importantly, going back to that purpose, we managed to keep services going, support to members, our education and our training, all the things that we're allowed to do by law, because some things we can't do, like big physical events, we have been able to keep going, to change and to improve. So we weathered the storm, we're still standing, and we're ready for what comes next. And equally importantly, actually, I think as part of doing that, we have shown ourselves that we can change pretty fast when we need to. And I'm not sure we always believe that of ourselves, but having discovered the habit, we don't want to lose it. I guess, again, like many of your organisations, we did some things in a matter of days that we had thought would take months. Well, that's a brilliant thing to find out about yourselves, and we want to stay in that place. Two final things to say. It's very clear to me that the work that we are doing on promoting professionalism, the professional standards framework, I know Debbie's going to talk to you about later, I think it's hitting home, and I think professionalism and the support professionalism across housing is growing. It's on the rise. I have a lot of conversations with organisations, with boards, with chief execs. They are all interested to talk about professionalism. So the professionalism that you show, the work we do to support it, I think it's appreciated, and I think the appetite for it is on the rise across the UK. That's a great place to be. And the final thing I wanted to say is we work hard to have influence in policy debates across the UK. Politics now is as complicated maybe as it has ever been, but I think in every nation we still have influence. Matt chaired the Welsh Government, one of the streams of the Welsh Government Working Group on Affordable Housing in Wales. Callum is joint chairing a domestic violence working group. The work that Justin and the team in Northern Ireland are doing on the most recent Rethinking Social Housing project is having an impact. And in England, James and Mel and the policy team, we are on the list of people that government want to talk to when they're thinking about their next policy steps. So despite a complicated environment, we still have influence and impact. So here we go. Let me tell you a little bit about the money, where we are, where we've ended up. I don't want to talk you through all of this in detail, but what I want to show you, or would like you to focus on, is about 2/3 of the way down that slide. There's a line that says total COVID impact. You can see that the 3 weeks at the end of the year, the impact of the pandemic cost CIH the best part of £700,000. Now that was, I'll confess, just a little bit depressing, having worked hard all year to put ourselves in a place to get a really good result. But there are two things that I want to say to you about it. So first of all, absent COVID, I think we would have produced a surplus of probably 500,000, maybe 600,000 for the first time in a very long time. That would have been a huge achievement and would have been 10 times the surplus that we had identified in our financial turnaround plan. So yeah, I want to say to you that working with you, we did a really good job last year in terms of turning around our finances. The second thing to say is the work that we've done across the last couple of years put us in a position where we could withstand a shock of that size and stay standing. I think if the pandemic had happened 2 years earlier, life would have been a lot harder. What did it What did it do to our plans for this year? Well, you can see quite a lot. We've had to assume that we're going to have to absorb something approaching a £1.5 million hit. And as a result of that, we've had to introduce some pretty significant cost savings and cuts. We've had a recruitment freeze. We're not in our offices and we're not traveling, and that continues and probably will carry on for a good while yet. That produces quite a lot of savings. We made pretty significant use of the furlough scheme. At any one point in time, between a quarter and a third of the people working for CIH have been on furlough. That was tough on the people on furlough, tough on our colleagues who were picking up extra work, but necessary. This is what we think we can achieve. We're trying to outperform this plan, but if we can hit our financial plan, we will stem what would have been a massive loss down to about 250,000. Our plan is to try to exceed that, but that's the kind of reasonable worst case scenario. Where are we now? Here's what our cash flow looks like. That's a complicated graph with lots of wiggly lines on it. What I away from this is if you look at the green line, that's what we think would have happened if we hadn't taken any action. The red line is what we thought the action we took would be likely to achieve. The purple line is what we've actually been able to achieve. So we are running ahead and really quite significantly ahead of where we said we would be. We crossed under the red line in August and September. That's mostly to do with the fact that we are still unable to run physical events. So some things we thought we might be able to do when we were not able to do. And this is what our trading looks like. Again, a lot of numbers there, and I'm not going to talk you through them all. What I would say to you is look at the right-hand column. In every area, apart from events, which is out of our control, we are running ahead of where our revised budget for this year said we would be, and we're currently trading £189,000 ahead of where we would be. It's important to note that our trading performance at this point in the year is a loss. It would often be a loss at this point in the year because it's coming off the quietest part of the year, but we're way ahead of where we thought we would be. And most importantly, if you look at the second page, which includes the kind of the items that we can't really control, things like the gains on our investments and some other bits and bobs. Overall, actually, CIH has got a £30,000 surplus right now. We're running £400,000 ahead of where we said we would be, which is a brilliant place to be. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing my window so you can not have to look at the slides anymore, and I'll just talk to you. I'm going to use the slides as a memoir, and I'm really happy to circulate them afterwards if it's useful. Very quickly, I want to give you an update on our areas of work. So first of all, in terms of membership, just to give you a sense of where we are, we increased our membership, our paying membership in 2019-20. We have got fantastic engagement from members. The work that you do has helped deliver that, so thank you. The latest membership survey that we ran, actually, we had more than 2,000 responses. That's a huge increase from what we would have seen 3 or 4 years ago. I think that's a good measure of the level of engagement we're seeing from members. We've seen some really successful new initiatives. The Building Better Boards offer joint membership with Institute of Leadership and Management. And we really try very hard to push out as much free content as possible to members during the pandemic to support you with advice, with news, with good practice, which I hope you all saw. What we want to do is to carry on that good work, and I'm hoping that certainly the result of the more flexible regional structure we've put in place in England is helping us to work closely with you as members. Our increase in the number of member champions, I think, is going well. We want to carry on with the recruitment there, but overall, I think engagement with membership numbers, members feeling as if there's a bit of a buzz. It feels to me that we're moving in a really good direction. In the same way, for education and training, we had to change pretty quickly. We had to move a lot of stuff online very fast, and we've changed not only the mechanism for delivery, but we're pushing out a lot more information in kind of bite-sized content because we think that's how people want to learn in the current environment. We've introduced our online plus qualifications to allow people to work in the evenings or to work flexibly with additional tutor support. We've expanded our training offer with more shorter sessions, but we've also tried to listen to you and to the wider profession about the things that people think matter now. And we've introduced training content to address that. We're doing work ourselves to make sure we've got the right skills within CIH to support an online offer, to manage that kind of change and to make it successful commercially. As I mentioned, we're looking all the time to join up with other professional bodies. We already had a relationship with RTPI. We've now got the relationship with Institute Leadership and Management, with a joint membership offer there as well. These all feel like things that are moving in the right direction. Our policy work, I've said a little bit about the degree of our policy work across the nations. There's some highlights that I wanted to pull out for you. First and most importantly, I hope you'll have all noticed that we carry on making the case for proper, decent, affordable housing supply for social rented homes, because we think that those are the homes that are needed to properly house our population in every part of the UK. We have more success with those arguments, arguably in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland than we do in England, but we keep making the argument. We are a core partner in the Homes at the Heart partnership alongside the NHF, NatFed of Almos, Arch and Crisis. That was gearing up for a spending review, which now looks as if it may not happen, but the arguments that we're making about how it's essential that governments across the UK place housing at the heart of the recovery from the pandemic, those arguments haven't gone away. They're as important as ever, and we will carry on making those arguments. We've done a lot of work around both continuing work on domestic abuse and on mental health, and we're active in every part of the UK, in networks, in working groups, in debates in the sector and beyond, working with government to look at how we can promote work to deal with domestic abuse, to look at how we can properly promote good mental health. We all know, I think, that the welfare system is not working in the way that it needs to be, and that remains a key priority for us, which is to make the case to UK government, because this is a UK government policy, that welfare needs to work better and to be better joined up with housing if we're actually going to achieve the housing policy aims that we've set ourselves. And then in our spending review submission, as well as talking about the things that I've already mentioned, we've been very clear with government that there is much more that needs to be done and more support that needs to be made available around making homes safe. There is a huge job to do around retrofit and carbon reduction, which is going to need government support and government engagement. We are making the case for a shared prosperity fund because we need to be thinking now, particularly for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, about how we replace the EU structural funds, also actually for parts of England with weaker economies. We need now government to be thinking about that. And you will appreciate as much as anybody that there is a huge amount of work still to do to deal with homelessness and street homelessness and to properly end it, to deal with the ending of the Everybody In programme, and to avoid the risk of a tidal wave of evictions coming down the road if we don't take action now whilst the eviction moratorium is in place. So those are some of our policy priorities which we're working on across the UK. The final thing that I want to mention as a priority is in our policy work as well as in our development work, we're making the case for professionalism and for government supporting the professionalism of the housing sector. And then finally, looking ahead, where are we going to go next? Just some highlights for you. We want to do more to promote professional standards, to promote the framework and the self-assessment tools that we're going to put alongside it, because that's our job as the professional body for people who work in housing. We want to grow our membership. Why would we not? And we want to work with you to do that. Our job is to get the right offer in place that people want to join us. I think we're on the way to doing that, and I'm ambitious for what I think we can achieve. We want to be a go-to provider for education and training. We've been incredibly successful, particularly around apprenticeships at the moment, but we're hungry to do more. In all of that, I think we need to be timely, to be relevant, to be current, and to be agile. The needs for you and your job change. We need to respond to that. We want to show you really, really good customer service. We want to be an influential voice. We want to carry on being an influential voice. And finally, and very, very importantly, we want to be financially stable. And I think that means building on what I've already shown you, but also moving ourselves to a place where, although we value the relationships we have with our partner organisations, our financial stability does not depend on somebody else's performance. We do that for ourselves. In short, I think that our job is to work to be the professional body that you all deserve, and I want to work with all of you to achieve that. So I want to finish there by saying thank you again for everything that you've done, for all your support. That support has got us this far. I hope you can see we're ambitious. I'm perhaps a little bit impatient about where we can go next. And I know that in doing that, we will get some stuff right and we'll get some stuff wrong. And I'll just recognise that now. If we do get it wrong, just let us know. We'll try again. We want to grow the profession and the impact of our work. And we really, really want to carry on working with you to do that, because you make us better. So thank you for that. And your work, the work you do in your day jobs, changes lives. Our job is to be the professional body you deserve to help you to change lives even more. That's all I wanted to say, and I can see that I've two minutes over, for which I apologise. But I'm really happy to take any comments, take any questions, to pick up on anything that you think that I might have missed. I can see at the moment that it's a bit of a tumbleweed moment in the Q&A. You can also, I think you can also put up your hand if you'd like to do that. But otherwise, I just have to keep talking for another 6 minutes because I can't see any questions or anybody with their hand up. So I'm going to stop just for a minute. Here we go, while we wait and see. Did I see someone with a hand up? Sue, can we invite Sue onto the stage, please? By the magic of television, Sue should be joining us any second now.
Oh, goodness. I'm not sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Sorry, I wasn't expecting to come on the stage. That's quite intimidating. I just want to say, Gavin, that as a professional during the pandemic, I really noticed the profile of CIH was so much higher than I'd seen previously. And I thought we really raised our bar significantly during that time. So I just wanted to say thank you for that, because all the free stuff was, and all the kind of positive messages that came out from that, because we were all struggling. Well, certainly from my perspective, we were. So we're all struggling with the kind of realities of the situation. And the message was always, well done, you're doing really well. And that's exactly what we needed to hear at the time. So it's just a thank you to the officers for delivering that message for us.
Thank you, Sue. And you're right. It's about the work that people who work for CIH did. It's about our national directors, their policy teams. It's about James and Mel and the policy team in England, the comms team that got that out. The good practice advice. There's a huge number of people behind it. But I'm really pleased that you thought it was the right stuff. We thought very hard about what it was that we should do, and we thought the right thing to do was to try to support people as much as possible. So I'm glad that you thought that we managed to achieve that. And thank you for that, and thank you for being brave enough to come on stage as well. And I think people will whisk you away again now, but it's good to see you. Thank you. I can see a comment from Beth saying, just to come to say the support has been excellent. Thank you, Beth. Yeah, we're very conscious that the way in which we deliver a decent amount of the work that we do around training and education involves us working in partnership with other organisations and with individuals, and we do want to support you as much as we can and to find a way to work together that works for all of us. Even though I know we're all under pressure at the moment, we're stronger when we work together, and we can get through this together. Annalisa, more thanks. Thank you very much. I'm glad, like Sue, you felt it work. It worked. Thank you for that. Emma, a comment from the East Midlands. We've been thinking about what our regional work looks like in these busy and distant times, and so far we're acting as more of a sounding board. Emma, do you want to come on stage and say a little bit more about that? Because I think that's more of a comment than a question. So I'd like to invite you up if you want to kind of reflect on that a little bit more. Somebody will arrive, or a message will arrive to enable you to come and join me. Is Emma coming? That's the question. Yeah. Yes, she is. Hi, Emma. Go on, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, just a comment, a reflection, and I wonder, Gavin, if you've got any thoughts, and it'd be interesting to hear from others what they're thinking. So it's busy times. The East Midlands is the group membership is quite local authority heavy. So I know people have been pulled in lots of different directions. So people's ability to contribute in the way that they might have done in the past is hard. And of course, in the past, our contribution looked like in the real world, not on my sofa as I am now. So we've had to think differently about what we do, how we come together, how we make best use of all the people that really want to contribute, but it just feels harder. So we've got a meeting this afternoon actually, and we had one about a month ago, and we've just used it as a check-in, a bit of a round robin, what's going on. Rebecca's joined us, Jill's joined us. So we're hoping that that's useful for CIH staff, that we offer those reflections, and then we can hear what you're thinking about and offer a bit of a sounding board. But that feels about as much as we can do just now, and I think we're keen to do more, but I don't know, it's hard, isn't it?
Well, so first of all, thank you for what you do, but also actually I think that sounding board role is really, really helpful. And I'm really conscious that everybody's a volunteer, so you can only do what you can do. And in the current world, we're all operating under more demands probably than we've ever operated under before, whilst also doing things in quite strange and new and different ways. But that sounding board role alone is really, really helpful, because I think each of us in our own jobs knows that having critical friends, with the emphasis on the second part rather than the first part, is really, really important. And the feedback that we get from our volunteers, who are our most active members, is some of the most important feedback we get, because it's consistent, it's long-term engagement, and it helps us to think our way through some of the changes that we might need to make. It also helps us to identify where we've taken a misstep, because as I tried to say, we're trying to change pretty quickly. That will mean that we will make mistakes, and I think that's okay. We just want to catch them. An organisation that makes no mistakes is one that doesn't try anything. So we need to try. What we need is your help, that sounding board role, to tell us, guys, that was a great thing, keep doing that, but maybe that one, just give it a break, because it hasn't worked. So that alone is incredibly valuable. So thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. I think somebody will whisk you away again. I can see that I've only got 1 minute left, but that's good, because there's only one question. Thank you to Clive and to others for the questions. I'll try to get to them both in the time available. Are there any barriers, Jeanette is asking, to raising professionalism of the sector, perhaps the government viewpoint of our sector? Jeanette, I think you're right. I think we have, if you want to be regarded as a professional, you've got to claim that. We have to say we are professional. We have to say being a professional matters, that being a professional is more than just being a person who knows some stuff. It's about how you put that knowledge into practice. It's about how you behave. It's about the ethical framework that you operate within. And we have to demonstrate to government why that matters and why that makes a difference. And we have to demonstrate to the organisations in our sector who maybe aren't yet converted why that matters, why that makes a difference. And if we do that, I think we will get greater support for professionalism within our sector, within our profession, but also from the government. But the ball's in our court, and it's also in CIH's court. That's one of the things that I mean by saying we need to be the professional body that you deserve. And then finally, Clive, what are the future best revenue making streams? That's a good question, Clive. So in short, I think the answer to that is kind of twofold, Clive, because actually it's not only where is the best money to be made, but it's also what is our purpose. The good news is that there is money to be made in our purpose. Education, training, apprenticeships in particular continue to perform well financially, and I think they're performing better financially actually because we're doing a better job in terms of what we're offering. And the more you hit scale, the more actually as you know, your fixed cost stay, your revenue increases and your margins go up. So that's definitely a decent chunk of where our future revenue comes from. And of course, and obviously membership, because that's one of our other core purposes. But the good news about membership as well is that there's quite a lot of fixed cost in membership. So the more you can grow your membership, the more the margins grow, and the more we then have the ability to reinvest in the organisation. So in the medium term, the answer is, I think, education, training, apprenticeships, membership, those are going to be CIH's core revenue streams. I think events will come back, but that's on a slower burn and they're going to look very different. And that's a discussion for another day, because I can see that I'm now over time and I need to stop. So I'll finish there and just say thank you ever so much for the work you do. We really appreciate it, and I look forward to working with you all into the future as well. Take care, and I'll see you all in the networking sessions later on.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gavin. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions going on as we carry on throughout the day. So please do, everyone, keep using the hand tool and the Q&A box to ask questions, and the general chat as well, just for feedback. That's all really useful. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Gordon Perry. And for those of you that haven't met Gordon before, he acts as a link to our governing board, predominantly for our regional group. So there he is. By magic, he's appeared. So I'll shut up and hand over to Gordon.
Thanks very much, Becky. Good morning, everyone. I've been asked to say a few words about my role and about the regional group link. But I wanted to start off, I've just got a couple of slides. I could start off with one slide at the beginning, please. The driver, which is actually just to say thank you, which is a nice link, as if myself and Gavin had rehearsed this, which is to say thanks so much to everyone out there who, at the end of the day, we're all volunteers. We're all committed to housing and making that difference in people's lives. And we can't do that without our volunteers or activists or whatever you want to be called, but people who will passionately support the principle of a professional housing service that we deliver, and it's so important for people's lives. So a big thank you to everyone. Next slide, please. The next slide is a picture of demonstrating what's happened to my commitment over the last 40 years. Yes, that's me. For those of you who don't know me, that's me 40 years ago, when that's the one with the fringe. Yes, I'd love a fringe again, but unfortunately that's unlikely to appear. And that's when I joined CIH in 1980. And I'm as passionate today as I was then about housing and about the vital importance that we play. That's just a picture of me in Bolton when we had a housing crisis back in the early 80s, which was a different kind of crisis. It was a housing crisis, but also we had significant difficult to let. 40 years ago, that estate in Bolton was knocked down because we had 30% of homes that couldn't be filled. So the world has changed. The world has changed lots, but there's some things that haven't changed. So can we just have the next slide, please? And that's because what's not changed is it's really important that we all talk, we all keep talking. And that's my role, which is about trying to be a link between the new regional groups and the governing body, CIH governing board, which I joined 3 years ago. And I've tried to get around, certainly before the pandemic, get around what was then the regional boards, and I've visited most in the last the previous 2 years to COVID. But I would really like to keep that communication open, and so we do have a WhatsApp group originally that we set up, which has not been used much of late, but it's great now that Rebecca's set up a monthly report on LinkedIn, on the One CIH LinkedIn page. So if you've not already joined that page, I really appeal to you to do so, and to communicate. Let's keep talking through that way, or through the WhatsApp group. So I'm going to go back on the WhatsApp group immediately after this to try and remind people, so you can contact me directly, or you can do that through the LinkedIn page, which I'll start keeping an eye on now in the future, and make sure I look at that once a week to try and make sure we continue to talk. So could we have the next slide, please? I want to make sure I don't go over my my 5 minutes. Yeah, so I think it's really important that we do keep on talking, and it's not just to each other, to make sure that we at the governing body hear what the regional groups, what the devolved nations, what the policy committee is talking about. It's really important that we learn from each other, but it's also important that we keep talking so we support each other. And I think this pandemic has actually demonstrated how important that is, and more important than ever to do that, both with your colleagues, with your family and loved ones, because getting that balance between work and life is really key. And we can only be great volunteers, great housing professionals, and pretty decent people if we carry on talking and supporting each other. So please keep that going. So if there's anything, also privately, people want to do me a direct message. If you don't want to contact through the LinkedIn page or through WhatsApp, do a DM on Twitter, because I'm also on Twitter. So please keep talking. And so the final slide from me, I think, which is just that message, which is it's really important to talk. And one thing we've done quite a bit of talk about in the last 12 months, and I just want to speak directly to one issue that I know regional groups were frustrated about, some members in particular. Faisal, mate, you're out there and spoke to you about this earlier, is about the delay in getting the website project up and running. And all I've got to say is it's as frustrating to the executive, to the governing body, as it is to you out there who want a better website so that you can run virtual events, etc. But it has been a really difficult project, in part because it was an integration between a website, between a finance system, and so it's more complex than we thought it would. And our suppliers, frankly, have been pretty poor, or they've certainly let us down. But the good news is that we are more confident than ever that we're going to be able to go live with this before Christmas. And I can't promise it's going to be next month, but we are in the minute of testing. We're going through testing now, and making sure that the critical issues are working so that we safely go live before Christmas. So that's it, really. I just want to say, please keep talking, because we are listening. The exec team have done an amazing job during the pandemic, as I think people have recognised. But I think it's really important that we support you as volunteers, and you tell us what you need from us so that you can carry on promoting this really important issue of being a housing professional, which I signed up for 40 years ago, and I'm as passionate about now as I was then. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Gordon. Has anybody got questions or comments for Gordon? We've probably got a couple of minutes leeway if anybody does have anything that they don't want to pop into his messages afterwards.
My word, does that mean I kept to time?
Yeah, you did all right, Gordon.
My word. And make sure you send me an award or something, because it's unusual for me to keep exactly to 5 minutes.
Oh, I can speak to Vanessa about a certificate if you want. All right. Okay, cool. So it doesn't look like we've got any pressing questions anyway, but Gordon's going to be around with us. So if you pop onto his table, or wait, hang on. Is that a question?
Well, Gabby's waving to me. So I'll wave that.
Clive wants you to pop to the next Yorkshire and Humberside meeting.
Sorry, thank you, Clive. I'd love to come. I mean, what I've said consistently is, and particularly now it's virtual, I can go anywhere in the country, and I've got some space. I'm actually, whilst I'm a board member on a number of organisations, I'm a board member of Trafford Housing Trust, which was also acquired by L&Q last year. So I'm on their audit, or about to join their audit committee at L&Q. And I'm a board member at CIH and a consultancy, but I don't have a full-time job. So I do have the space, and I've got the passion to do that. So I'd love to go to every meeting. And to be honest, I can speak about most things. I can either just come and listen, or I can actually stimulate a debate about most things housing, because I've done most jobs over the last 40 years. So I've got an opinion about most things, which most people will know who know me.
Great. And I think the question here from Annalisa Gordon is quite an important one. So I think we should cover that now before we move on to Debbie. So Annalisa has asked about the role of governing board and how it all links in. So
yeah, I think it's a really good question. Governing board's job is to actually, and we're trustees of the organisation. So our job primarily is to support the continuation, if you like, of the professional body. So actually, our focus is running the professional body as that, and as a business. So actually, it's quite interesting. A lot of people talk about saying, well, do you do all the policy work, etc.? Well, we don't. We have a policy committee that actually focuses and supports the executive on policy work. And I know that regional groups are quite really interested in becoming more involved in development of policy, and we're looking at ways of being able to support that, perhaps by an annual event or a biannual event. So we're having conversations about how we do that. But in the main, the governing board is about running the organisation and governing the organisation and making sure it's financially sound. That's why over the last 2 or 3 years since I joined, we've been focused on how do we make sure we're solvent and how do we make sure we're back into profit rather than using reserves. So that's really our prime, and make sure we've got the structures to achieve that. So the question that was asked of Gavin earlier about what's profitable and where should we be focusing your attention, we've got that balance about making sure we fulfill our objects as a charitable trust, which is about promote housing and professionalism, but at the same time make sure we do that and support the membership, but we remain solvent and profitable.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gordon. I'm just really conscious of time. Emma, your point about having chairs catch-ups and having updates from governing board, hopefully some of the points Gordon's mentioned will start to increase that communication again between Gordon, myself, Josie and the others. But
yeah, I think I could say that Emma's picked up about the issue about should we have non-confidential minutes circulate after each meeting. I'm actually, one thing myself and Rebecca's talked about that, and with that it might be easier if I could do that, but I'm more than happy after each meeting doing a brief report to say this is what happened to the governing board, which is a cover maybe of the non-confidential minutes, and that's fine. So we'll thanks Emma for that suggestion. We'll certainly look at that. And as for what's the WhatsApp group's name, can't remember.
So the WhatsApp group initially, Beth, was set up for the regional chair. What were the chairs? And I think there may have been a couple of devolved nations people in there, I'm not sure, but it was mainly regional. So I think the best thing that maybe doing, we'll update to make sure all of the leaders and chairs are on that group after today's meeting. But the kind of general chat and to keep in touch with other volunteers, I'd recommend joining the LinkedIn group, because we are posting updates in there all the time. So we'll make sure again that we share the link with that and put it in the follow-up email as well as in the chat just now, as well. So.
Yeah, and remember, as I said, I'm on Twitter. I'm Gordon P Housing. I kind of do Twitter every other day. So if you want to direct message me anything, anybody, I promise I'll reply. I am a bit of a control freak around it, so you will get a response.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gordon. Thank you for giving us your time today. And my excellent chairing skills are seeing us run over time. So we've got Debbie Lana joining us now, and Debbie's leading on all of our work around professionalism, and in particular the development of the professional standards framework, which hopefully some of you will have heard about or come across up until this point, and in being involved in the testing. There we go. So without further ado, Debbie, I'll hand over to you, and if you still got your 20 minutes, as long as people don't mind running 5 minutes behind for their coffee and loo break, then I think we'll be all right.
What do you mean 20 minutes? I have half an hour.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks ever so much, Bex. And I think Gavin and Gordon have set this up really, really well. I've got 2 cats who are roaming around, so I really apologise if one wanders in front of the screen. You might be wondering what's been happening to our professional work, and as Gavin talked about earlier, we had to make some serious business decisions over the spring and the summer about what we would continue to do to make us viable and what we would be able to park. And the professionalism work was one of those things that we actually did park, but we're back with a venue. So, don't worry, we're back on it. And actually, bizarrely enough, I think in terms of timing, the timing is actually more pertinent than ever following the COVID pandemic. So I'm going to share my screen, and this is going to work seamlessly. Share. What I would recommend, mainly because I don't want you guys looking at me, is if you make your screen big, because there's quite a lot of detail in the presentation, and you'll get more value from it if you get rid of me. So if you go up into the top right button, you can make it bigger, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to basically, some of you will have seen this before, but I think what you'll find is actually we've made much more progress than you might have thought. This is some of the stuff that we've talked about. What are the big questions? What are we trying to solve here? So how do we generate a sense of public pride in social housing as a career and a place to live? How can we raise the profile of the housing profession and maybe challenge some of the perceptions people have? So again, I'll talk about this a bit more. You know, we talk about lawyers and doctors and they're recognised as professionals. Housing hasn't had a great press over the last 5 years or so, maybe longer. We've seen lots of like horrible TV programmes about, you know, as we all saw, Neighbours from Hell, all that kind of thing. A big thing around stigma, again, which links into the Green Paper. We did a brilliant piece of work, which we launched at our virtual housing summit around See the Person. There's something that someone else picked up earlier, is about having equal credibility. I'm talking to Michael from Swindon earlier, and they make sure that all their social workers are professionally qualified, but we don't necessarily do that with housing people. So often housing people are sitting around the table and they're maybe not seen to have the credibility as social workers or other professionals. There's something about professionalism and raising the bar, building our specialist skills. And I think both in light of COVID-19 and some of the issues around Black Lives Matter, those two big things during the summer make it even more important that we behave. We have a range of professional characteristics and we behave professionally. I think the sector shone during the COVID pandemic. So what can we learn from that? This builds on that really. It's the change we want to see. We want to be recognised and valued. We want to have the kinds of skills and knowledge. We want to add value and change lives. We want to be a force of change. And there's things in here about the impact of language, behaviour and conduct. We're not as good as we think we are. We still hear things that aren't actually acceptable. And there's something, again, post-COVID, but in our sector anyway, we need to react positively in a changing environment, and to react really quickly to change, you need to show professional attitudes and behaviours. I just stuck this slide in a couple of minutes ago because I think it talks to Jeanette's point about barriers, and I think there's something about this that we don't really know. We haven't got a single word to define us as a profession. We can't say lawyer, doctor, surveyor, and I think that's quite a challenge for us. People don't understand what housing is because it's such a generic term. It's a generic term that spans so many things. So I think if you say midwife, everyone knows what a midwife does. But if you say housing, people absolutely probably don't know. My mum still thinks I'm an estate agent, bless her. And our behaviours aren't always suitable, which I've talked about before. And with the exception perhaps of everyone sitting in their virtual room today, I don't necessarily think we see ourselves as a coherent group of people, and I think that's a massive role for us as a professional body. While I'm going to talk about the kind of journey, the professional journey, and what we're actually doing as infrastructure, I just wanted to make it really, really clear that this is more than a framework. It isn't just the infrastructure that's important. Yes, it's really important to be able to demonstrate this and have a process, but it's broader than that. It's about us messaging on why professionalism matters. It's about us influencing the governments across the UK. We know that the government are still interested in professionalism and that they're looking at it in terms of the white paper that we're expecting, hopefully by the end of the year. So it's definitely on their agenda. We're talking to civil servants at Westminster, and I know my colleagues in the devolved nations are talking to governments as well. With government saying professionalism is important, it makes such a massive difference and gives this work a real impetus. Again, how do we get the buy-in and make the case for why professionalism is important? There's a lot of cynicism out there. There's a lot of organisations who say, well, I don't need this. There's people out there who say, well, I've been in housing 20 years. I know what I'm doing. So we've got a massive job in making the case and changing that culture. Again, I'm going to keep talking about stigma because it links so much. We've got a big job to do around tackling stigma, both internally in our sector and externally. And one of the things, we're not calling this a project, we're calling it kind of a way of being. This is the way CIH will be going forward, and we will embed it into everything we do. And we hope that the sector will embed it into everything they do. And it's not a one-off piece of work. We're not going to stop at a given point. This is around continuously learning and developing both CIH and the sector out there. So I think that's a really important message. And we've tried to do some understanding about why this is important, and we need to do more work on this. So I'd really value your support, because it goes back to that case of making the case for this, why it's important. It's really hard to put metrics onto this, because we're not making widgets, but there are, for organisations, they've told us to have professionally qualified staff and professional staff. These are the things that talk to them. For individuals, this is the things that people said why it's important to them. And again, I'd like us to carry on having that conversation about what's important and why it is important to you as really involved members of CIH. We asked people what this meant in practice, and we had quite a range of things. Hopefully you'll recognise some of those things. I mean, it's not about having less complaints. I do recognise that having less complaints isn't necessarily a good thing, but this is more in terms of less complaints about staff and staff's attitude towards tenants and that whole respect agenda. So I wanted to, now I kind of caveated it, it's not just about the framework. I just wanted to talk a little bit about our plans. The dates are a little bit dependent on other things, so they're not set in stone. And I'm not going to talk now I'm going to talk about these in detail in a little bit, but we see a 4-stage process through the professional journey to be recognised as a professional. Don't need to go through all those stages, you can pick them. Some we're making available to members and non-members, but as we get into the nitty-gritty, we're going to make the member only, and we're going to be proud that we're doing that. So the first thing, we do start off with the professional standards framework. So this is something we're really ambitious to hope to get done this year, because we think it's a really important thing to kind of set out what we think professional principles are, what professional characteristics are, and the standards that sit behind those. When I talk about standards, there'll be kind of statements. So when we talk about what a leader is, we'll have statements that back that up. We've made a very clear business decision that this will sit on our website and be available for anyone, because we think it's really important to get the message around professionalism out to everyone. And we're hoping that by people kind of non-members sort of being able to access this, it will get them interested in CIH. And there will be some content linked to that as well, and it will be interactive. I talked about that it will link, the professional principles will be at the heart of that. These are some of the overarching professional principles. We'll still be having conversations about these, so I'm not going to dwell on them now. Hopefully, most of you will recognise these. I think we're pretty clear that these are the characteristics that, as a sector, we felt quite happy with. We did a lot of consultation on this. Coming back post-summer and post-furlough, looking at these again, I was interested to see whether they'd still stand up in light of COVID and Black Lives Matter and some of the challenges we have to face, and I feel quite confident that they do. So phase 2, so once we've got the professional standards framework up and alive, we're going to be looking at what we're calling a simple profile. And this again is available for members and non-members. There'll be a set of assessment questions, which will be yes, no. So do you do X? Do you do Y? And that will be based around the 7 characteristics. Members and non-members will get a simple profile report. That will show in bar and spider graph. And then for non-members, they won't get any content, but they'll get a strong link to membership. And for members, we'll link them to some relevant content. So again, it's about differentiating the offer. Non-members get so much, and then they stop. Members get value the whole way through this process. This is just an example of what your bar and your spider graph look like, and some text around Don't worry that you can't see it. I think it's written in Latin, but it gives you a really good example of what members and non-members will get. So on the left it says become a member. That's what non-members will get. On the right it does say become a member, but what that will be a box with content in it that's actually tailored to members. So if they scored quite low on, for example, ethics, it will push content on ethics towards them to have a read of. The next stage is the peer assessment, self-peer assessment. So again, this is only for members, and this is a much more in-depth analysis than the simple profile you get. It's an ability to, it's much more detailed, it will link to the standards, and it'll enable people to get peer assessment as well as their own. So you're getting a whole 360 profile and a gap analysis of what you're good at and what you're not good at. And again, it will signpost to existing content. So again, this is the sort of thing it will look like. I know this is quite difficult to see, which is why I sort of encourage you to open your screens up. But the green bar is what a member thinks, and the yellow bar is what their peers think. So it's doing a kind of, this is what you think. So here our member obviously doesn't think they're as knowledgeable as their peers do. So it'll provide that gap analysis. And as you'll see, the content at the bottom, it will be tailored. It will actually pick up what they need to maybe improve on. There's no activity needed, and it's just self-learning and self-reflection at this point. And this is where we think this is a really exciting thing. I think this is working towards that professional recognition. We're working closely with a company called Meta Capability, who did this work with the Institute of Leadership and Management. CIPD have just done a wheel of a professional standards interactive wheel, which is great. ILM have done something further, but we've gone one step further than ILM in terms of recognising it as professional. So this is around members self-reflecting and building a portfolio of evidence. It enables them to get progress badges. It will be very tailored content pushed to them. And you'll get recognised digital badges and be recognised as a professional. So again, sorry, it's small, but the assessments that people, this is an example of the assessment on the left that people will go through. This is against each of the 7 characteristics, and why this is different from the earlier stuff. The earlier stuff's just generic, whereas this is very, very tailored to the 7 characteristics. In the middle, you'll see the 7 characteristics are on the top, and this is how far the member has gone through in going through the process. And again, we've got tailored content on the bottom. And then on the right, our member has completed everything, and will be able to move on to the next stage. So again, this is our member on the left, who has got 2 digital badges. They sit in a filing cabinet. They can't do anything with them. On our right, this member's got all of their 7 badges against all the characteristics. They can't do anything with them yet because they need to go through the professional interview. So once all the 7 badges are achieved, the member will then have a professional interview. They will submit their evidence to the panel, so what they have gathered during the process of gathering their badges. So at each stage when you're gathering badges, you're not just doing the yes, no, true, false thing, you're actually having to demonstrate and gather evidence. It'll be a similar format to current interviews, but you'll be able to book it online and the whole thing will take place online. We anticipate that, similar to now, it'll be a panel of CIH members. But once we start getting recognised professionals, we'll start seeing them on the panel as well. And similar to now, it'll be a pass-fail, and it will be a structured interview. We need to do some more thinking about, once you pass the interview, how long you have, what the CPD requirements are, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. Once you pass your interview, you then get a recognised professional badge, and then you can post it onto all your digital platforms, on LinkedIn, Twitter, on your email, to recognise you as a professional. So that all sounds really simple, but there's lots and lots for us to do. A big piece of work, and that's why we're phasing it up. We need to finalise the standards and do a massive consultation on that. We need to finalise the professional principles, make sure everyone's happy with those. A big job in mapping our existing products and services against the standards, so we have that tailored content. We need to do a knowledge audit across the organisation, collate knowledge and curate it so it's fit for purpose, it's current and it's up to date. And we need to identify the gaps where we haven't got the knowledge and see where we can fill it. And if we can't fill it, what partner organisations can we work with? So we need to create this knowledge bank of information. We need to create an interactive visual for the framework. There's a lot of work to do in terms of making sure that the web CRM interface works, because the system needs to recognise whether you're a member, it needs to recognise what location you are in the country in terms of in the devolved nations, because we'll have to tailor content according to that. We need to do quite a lot of work on creating a range of self and peer assessment questions against each standard. So we'll have approximately 10 standards per characteristic, so that's 70 standards, and we need probably about 10 variable questions against each of those 70. So that's about 700 questions. So if anyone wants to volunteer for that piece of work, please contact me. We need to build the platform in a stage way, and the whole way through this stuff we need to test it. So a lot of that is around like getting the infrastructure in place. We will need to develop a whole new range of products and services to support the framework as we move forward, and keep that going and updated so it's not static, that we're constantly adding new content. We talked about this a little bit earlier. We need to develop a new modern CPD offer, and we want it to be attractive. We want people to want to do it, and we want to make it useful, easy to do. So there's a huge piece of work. We'll need to think about links and routes into membership, because what you might say is, well, that looks like a route to membership to me, and it does, and we need to think about that. And then there's something around aligning this framework into organisational appraisals and value systems, so that rather than having to do a 360 as a member of staff and then a 360 for this, we can try and integrate it together. Those things are in red because they're big and they're longer term things. And that's me. Any discussion, questions? I don't know how long we've got, Beck. Some of those on time. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. I did anticipate this would be a popular slot, so we do have some questions. I am conscious that we're eating into your loo break and tea break, but hopefully people won't mind, because it is such important work that we're doing at the moment. So five or so minutes for questions, I think. So just looking at what we've got in here, we have had one question about the point you made about what was going to be chargeable versus what would be freely available for members. I don't know if you wanted to just recap a bit over that, Deb, and just, I suppose it's not fully formed at the minute, is it?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. We've got a massive list of questions. It's one of the things that we need to think about. How do we commercialise this offer? What we make free, what we make available, what the additional offer is on top of this. We haven't thought it through, but we know we need to. So I'm sorry if that's a bit vague. So again, I know we've got some in the audience. We've got a bunch of professional champions. I've got a list of people. If anyone wants to join that list, please, because these are the conversations that we're going to have with you. So it's not fully formed yet, but it's on the agenda. Sorry, that's a really easy answer.
No, that's all right. I think it's just about getting as much feedback as possible from people in the audience, like you say as well, Debbie, isn't it? Just, you know, if we don't know what's going on in your organisations and the types of conversations that are being had, then, you know, there's a risk that the framework wouldn't be reflective and representative of what's going on. Another question, we'll leave the top one until a minute, but I think this is one that gets asked a lot, is around CPD and how this kind of links into that. I think we do have a view that this could be a really good way for us to rebrand CPD a bit and make it a bit more engaging. So I'm quite excited about that side of things from a membership perspective. I didn't know if you wanted to add anything in with your thoughts, Deb.
Yeah, CPD is going to be fundamental to this, because it's like anything. You have a professional interview, that's you marked as a professional on the day you do it. CPD has to be ongoing. Before we went into lockdown, we got a group of professional bodies together. We were about to have a conversation kind of kicking around what a modern CPD offer looks like. And Bex and I both say that actually we just need to kill the name CPD, because in some younger kind of members, when it sounds like a sexually transmitted disease, which isn't a good way to start. So we need to do a really good piece of work on CPD, make it easy for people to access, make people want to do it, make people evidence it. I don't think we've ever really wanted to go down the mandatory route, because we are not, you move into that license to practice area. But we certainly are going to be looking at it, and again there will be other working groups externally to help us do that. It's really exciting. We've wanted to do something with CPD. We've recognised that we need to do something with CPD for ages, and it's really exciting that this gives us the kind of platform and the opportunity to do it.
Amazing. This is kind of a point I suppose we covered, but Claire has asked about whether or not we'll crowdsource the questions for the self-assessment.
Oh, Bex, you're a young person, you can answer that.
So,
yeah, we will.
I think that's a good idea.
Absolutely.
If we can ask the waves and the crowds of people out there in the sector, what they think of the questions before we start asking them of people, there will be quite a lot of testing involved. And I think part of this, with the peer assessment, it is about that principle of sharing throughout the sector. So if we can get people to kind of almost validate what we're going to be asking of people, then that would be ideal, I think. And then the questions here, so one that's kind of similar to the CPD question, but Clive's asked about how this will link into routes to membership, which you touched on a little bit, Debbie, but I think basically the short answer to that is that is going to be reviewed, and all the products and services required off the back of establishing the framework will come into play. And we'll still, in all likeliness, have the exec route and the experienced professional route to chartered membership, as well as the qualification. But what we'll do is anyone that self-assesses themselves against the framework, we will be notified every time somebody does that. And if it appears that they're an experienced professional, or they might be suitable for some of our qualifications and training offers, that there'll be some clever marketing going on in the background to try and entice them into taking up those routes. And then the final thing, which is a really go on.
I think it's going to involve some really serious thinking on our part as well, because you could potentially, the way it is now, and this is organic and it will grow, the way it is now, you could be a recognised professional but not a chartered member, but you could be a chartered or a fellow member and not a recognised professional, and that's daft, and we can't, that won't work longer term. But equally, if you're a fellow, you've been in CIH for many years, what are you really going to go back, and what may feel to you going back to the start to demonstrate your professionalism? So we need to do some really serious thinking about this. We don't want to get into a situation where we take something off you like we did with fellowship, and that was the wrong decision. So this is really, really important stuff for us at CIH, and we need to get it right.
Yeah, definitely. Karen, your point about CPD, absolutely. I don't disagree with anything you've said there about how crucial it is, the link into professionalism. I think it is, when we say rebrand, it's basically a way of how we'll, use CPD, but to engage people in a different way. So if that means changing some of the conversations around it to put it into language that is a bit more understand for people, but then to all intensive purposes, the language we will use in the end is CPD. It's just about reintroducing that to the sector, and hopefully the framework will help give it that credibility to be seen in a similar vein to what RICS and other professional bodies do within the sector, because it tells us what we expect to see from a housing professional. The final point, there's a couple in here, so I don't know if you want to mention any work that you've been doing with MHCLG, Debbie. Sorry, that's put my teeth back in.
So it was really interesting actually, because they contacted us. So I'd been on furlough, and it was really late. It was like the day I came back, sort of part-time, I got an email from MHCLG, which was like serendipity really, saying it's very much on our agenda still. What are you doing? So we had a long conversation with them. I did try and sell the fact that if they made CIH membership mandatory and paid for everyone to be a member, that would be a good start, but they didn't seem to want to play on that one, but we'll keep trying. So it's very much on their agenda. I've sent them loads of stuff. I haven't sent them this presentation, but I will do. And what they've also asked, and some of you might have had contact actually, they asked for a list of people who are doing good stuff on professionalism. So I sent contact details for some of our champions so they could follow up. So they're taking this really seriously. And as I say, I was really worried it would drop off the agenda, and it hasn't at all. It's really, they're taking it. So we're ongoing dialogue with MHCLG.
Brilliant, thank you. And then this question, so obviously we've got lots of different people in different roles in the audience, and this person in particular has asked how you can help raise the credibility of the professionalism agenda when you're not the decision maker within the organisation. So I guess, you know, that makes reference to who signs off paying for memberships and training and things, but
that's just a really good question, and I don't have a definitive answer for that. And I think it goes back to Jeanette's earlier sort of point about what are the barriers and how do we do that, and some discussions actually we had yesterday in the Professional Standards Committee about how when you've got a group of CIH members in an organisation, how we give them a voice in that organisation and give them a platform and some credibility so they can come together. Because I don't think it should be about seniority, but equally it's about who pays the bills. So the business case is going to be so important. I mean, Gavin and James have been talking to lots of people and everyone's very excited about this, but we will always have cynics. But, you know, we're not intending to get everything done by January and then we stop. It's a growing thing, and I think we know the sector's quite competitive, and I think if we can get some big organisations championing this and putting their staff through it and paying for it and supporting them, because it's not just money, it's time for staff to have some space to do this. If we can start getting people to sort of champion it and talk about it, hopefully that will help.
Definitely, and I think regional managers are there to help with those conversations as well. It didn't have a name against that question, but if you did want us to come in and support you in those conversations, we'd be more than happy to do that. And then finally, Debbie, it looks like you've got a new fan because you're getting after your Twitter and LinkedIn handle. So I don't know if you want to pop them in the chat so that you can get
if you do a follow-up email, I'll put my details. If people want to get in touch with me directly about the work, then they can do. Just because I don't know what they are off the top of my head, I have to let them know.
Oh dear. If anybody has got Twitter open and already has Debbie, if you want to put that in the chat for everybody, and then Debbie can get some new followers off the back of today.
Yeah, Claire Powell's just tweeted. Thank you very much, Claire. So I shall
Jill's on hand. Look,
Jill, retweet Claire and then put her in comments. We can try and get a bit of buzz about this on social media as well.
Amazing, brilliant. Okay, great. So we're running over time, which is usual for me. I normally start everything with sorry I'm a few minutes late now, even though I'm in my front room. So we will have a 15-minute break for teas, coffees, any kind of snacks of your choice, seeing as we don't have to eat the compulsory pastries that are normally at these types of events when we do them in person. So please do go and help yourself to whatever's in your kitchen. And if you can all join us back here at 11:30, the tables will remain open as well, so you can keep chatting to people on the tables and saying hello. But yeah, back here for a prompt start again at 11:30, if that's okay, everyone. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed your break. Hopefully most of you are back with us now, because we are now going to be joined by our president, Aileen Evans, who's going to give us an update on the presidential campaign and some of the new initiatives that have come out recently off the back of the campaign as well. And there'll be lots of opportunity for questions before we close the event at the end. So hopefully you can all still hear us and we can welcome Aileen up to the stage to, there we go. Perfect. I'll hand over to you.
Hello, everybody. It's a real privilege. Actually, it's a real privilege to be here. It's a real privilege to endorse the thank yous that that others have already said for the stuff that you do. but most of all, it's a real privilege to be president of the professional body of the best job, the best career ever, in my humble opinion. Right, I am going to attempt to share my screen. I have had a practice at this, so with a little bit of luck, it will work. Because I've got a bit of a presentation for you. Here you go. Hopefully you can all see that. So that is me. Let's run our slideshow from the beginning. Okie doke. So yes, so that's me
at the moment. Can you share it again for us in the application window?
Right. Okay. Oh, we're not. Hang on. Let's go back. Show taskbar. Share again. Application window. Hang on. Sorry. That's. Hang on. I haven't got it open in the application window. I did have this cracked, didn't I?
You did.
And I haven't now. It's not showing. Hang on. There we go. There.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you.
Oh, thank goodness for that. Sorry about that, people. So yes. So that's me. Now I just need to make the presentation work. Right. I think somebody's going to have to take this over for me, because otherwise I will be fiddling with this and I can't seem to change the slides. Let's try again.
Yeah, that's fine. Sarah's going to do it for you.
Right, lovely. Okie dokie. So that's me and that's you, and apologise for my lack of technical ability. Unfortunately, I don't have one of my 12-year-olds in the room who continually tell me what a muppet I am with this stuff. But anyway, so moving on. Right. So another next slide, please, which is just the introduction, and then the one after that, please. That's cool. So what I wanted to do was to update you on what we have been doing with the presidential charity. As you know, not just the presidential charity, but the presidential campaign. As you know, I chose to work with Mind to raise the profile and issues around mental health, in particular for staff working in housing, but also then thinking about our tenants later on. And so we've released a couple of pieces of work, and I'm going to talk about another one that we're going to release, which will, which I hope will support the sector. The idea for the Mental Health at Work Commitment Guide that we have worked on with Mind came from a guide that the Blue Light Services have called Oscar Kilo. And Oscar Kilo is a toolkit that the police, ambulance and fire brigades have, that enables them and enables their organisations to support better mental health. And I was thinking about this and thinking, well, actually, as housing staff, we see some of those issues that those blue light brigades see. So, you know, we will see the impacts of severe antisocial behaviour. We'll be dealing with some mental health challenges amongst our tenants, and actually and some of the tenancy support work we do and some of the rent arrears work we do makes it stressful. I think, for people working in housing sometimes. So for me, it was about what could we do that could help housing organisations specifically support their staff. And so the Mental Health at Work Commitment Guide was born. I would urge you to download it, because actually it's a a very simple guide really, that talks about how we prioritize mental health, how we ensure that mental health is how we ensure that we have an open culture around mental health. But then there's also loads of practical things that organisations can do to support people who may have some challenges. So if we move on to the next slide, please. And the second thing we've done, which is kind of what I want to focus on, because the mental health commitment guide has been out since February. This one is new. This one is a couple of weeks old, and this is how we support tenants. One of the things that I think I recognised is that where we are dealing with mental health challenges amongst our tenants, they will have an impact on housing staff who might already have some mental health challenges for themselves. And so providing quite a simple guide that we worked on with tenants on this seemed to me to be something that we could hit kind of both ends of the issue. And if we think about this kind of post-Grenfell world, then hoarding, for example, which is a pretty standard example of mental health challenge, is something that housing staff are dealing with all of the time. Some of those cases are quite difficult, and actually after Grenfell, those cases became much more urgent and more difficult to deal with, because for many landlords, they were thinking about, if they couldn't solve the hoarding and it was in a tower block, what was it that we needed to do in order to ensure that we could make the rest of that tower block safe, for example. So it was against this context really that I wanted to do something around tenants and how we spoke with tenants. And if we move on to the next slide. And then the next, I will focus on the guide in a minute, the tenants guide in a minute. But if we, but one of the things I do want to do is to just whet your appetite for a little bit about what is coming next. Never one to waste a good crisis. Actually, we have done some surveys during lockdown of GEM programme graduates, of chief execs, and of people working in the homelessness sector, to look at what their mental health, how COVID impacted on their mental health. It started out originally pre-COVID as a guide that said, or as a piece of work or an idea that we wanted to test, that said, so we know there's loads of research, some brilliant research by Deloitte done last year or the year before, that said that those who are most anxious in the workplace are millennials. We have a talent issue, and we need to make sure that we attract and retain talent in the housing sector, and yet they're the most younger people are the most anxious in the workplace. And so we started out by trying to answer the question about how do we create mentally healthy workplaces for the young people who will become and in some cases are the leaders. How do we support their good mental health? So we started out by trying to answer that question, but as I say, never want to waste a good crisis. We also surveyed chief execs during lockdown. Actually, a number of those told me that they felt it just quite cathartic filling the survey in, because actually it's been a tricky time for everybody. But I think in particular for chief execs who've had to make lots of decisions in quick order, keep boards well informed and have boards in charge, it is about how they get supported with their mental health. The other thing I wanted to do about this was, around this whole campaign, actually, was to start a proper conversation in housing about mental health. So moving on to, so that slide is, study is coming soon, before the end of the year. So going back to the tenant guide, it's quite a simple guide that deals with three particular areas. One is managing rent arrears, one is communicating effectively with tenants and residents, and one is about training. And the training is kind of in the context of that having an open culture about mental health that the employer guide dealt with, because the two go hand in hand. So I'll deal with each of those now in succession. So if we move on to the next slide, please, what we will see is, in terms of managing rent arrears, I think our way, sometimes I think we're part of the problem, and I think we should always try to be part of the solution. I'm thinking sometimes about the way we deal with rent arrears, which are probably one of the biggest causes of mental health stress amongst social housing tenants. Mine did a study the year before last that said that 33% of people living in social housing experience some sort of mental health challenge. Now, that might be because they were housed with that particular challenge and they're in supported accommodation, or it might be because their accommodation and their housing circumstances and their circumstances of their lives are causing that. So in that context, rent arrears was seen as a really big issue amongst the people we spoke to. How we dealt with that as organisations was seen as being something that could really detrimentally impact on tenants' mental health and make things worse if we don't do it properly. So it was about having the ability and also the recommendation to say, would you like us to deal with somebody else or somebody else alongside you? Do you need some support with this? We had a case at Grand Union recently. It was a rent arrears case. It was a mental health case. We really cocked it up. And actually, we really cocked it up because we didn't ask a simple question at the start that said, you've got some issues. Would you like to have somebody else that will work with us and you to support them? We also, the guide also recommends about transferring to support services. And transferring to support services and making sure the support services pick them up. We have our own benefits and money advice team here at Grand Union. I'm sure quite a lot of you do. So for me then, it's about making sure that we own that relationship and we transfer, but we don't abdicate responsibility. Supportive correspondence. I'll read you a couple of direct quotes from tenants from the guide, and you can see for yourself. I paid my rent on time religiously until that point, but they didn't ask why I hadn't paid and just started threatening me with eviction. That's the worst way to respond, as when I'm unwell, I just bury my head in the sand. They should have noticed a change in my behaviour. If someone is on time with rent and never misses a payment, you think they'd notice I'd stop paying and ask why. So that's one way where somebody felt alienated and unable to deal with precisely the issue the landlord was trying to resolve with them. So then listen to this one. I was 2 days late with my rent as I'd changed jobs. My housing officer rang me after one day and said, we know how important being on time with your rent is. Is anything the matter? It wasn't, you haven't paid us. It was, are you okay? We want to help you. We know you usually pay on time. So they rang to support me and not to chase me. So you can see, and I'm sure lots of us are doing that practice. We've rewritten our letters here at Grand Union to talk about what is stopping you from paying your rent, rather than you've stopped paying your rent, pay us. So we've had, we've completely changed the way that we communicate with our tenants over these issues. So that supportive correspondence is a supporting way of dealing with that. and then also thinking about how you train staff to deal in that different way. This isn't going to come to them overnight. So thinking, and we're working now with groups of people who actually owe us money here at Grand Union, and are saying, okay, so in what way can we work with you more effectively, and what do we need to put in to support our staff to do that? Okay, so moving to the next slide, please. So communicating effectively with tenants and residents. We sometimes write letters that are from a bygone age. And again, at Grand Union, we've been religiously working through all of our standard letters, because we will all have them, that will be in a time for the way things were and not necessarily the way things are. So thinking about communicating in plain English, and letters, texts, emails, conversations, thinking about, so why are you communicating with them? How is it going to work out in future, and when is something going to happen? And then thinking about what a preferred method of contact is. There's loads of ways for people to contact us these days. There's loads of ways for us to respond to them. Thinking about, again, how we do that, so we contact people in their preferred way, is also a valuable thing, I think, to take on board from that. And just a final thing, that, you know, where we are collecting sensitive information, you know, we clearly must comply with GDPR, making sure that we properly obtain tenants' permission, so that we are acting appropriately and legally, and in particular where we are making referrals to voluntary organisations, for example, who might offer additional support, then thinking about how we do that within a legally compliant way. Okay, moving on then, please. If we have the next slide, that's great, lovely. So we also recommend that mental health training takes place as part of the induction. We do that here in an online basis. Actually, we are ramping that up to, well, it will be Teams or whatever platform we use for the moment, but making sure that mental health support and training. So that's not just about, our mental health is a partnership, I think, between employers and individuals. So for me, then it's about talking about that mental health as part of our induction, making sure that training frontline staff and have adequate training, but also adequate support. We run a youth and community development service here, and over the years, those staff have seen, and the workload of those staff has changed, and they are often dealing with families in crisis. We now have put clinical supervision in for those individuals, because they need to be able to offload that, and to a lesser extent, I think actually some housing staff do. So thinking about how we do that, but providing training on how people's experience of mental health problems can affect their housing situation and their engagement with you, I think, is vital. So that is the guide, the mental health guide as far as tenants were concerned. I focused on that rather than the landlord guide, as I say, because the landlord guide has been out a little while now, and I want to take opportunities, if I can, to promote the tenants guide, because it's actually a really simple, very effective piece of work. It's got loads of good practice examples in it. So if we move on to the next slide, please. There's also a slide in there that looks at what the risks and opportunities are. So thinking about when we might have contact with people and what the risks are of getting it wrong, but also what the opportunities are of getting it right. That table is really, really helpful. Again, it's a really, really good piece of work. So moving on, I won't go through all of those because I've I've just talked about rent arrears, but have a look at that, because I think there's some really excellent resources there. So the other thing I am doing is trying to raise money for Mind. Whilst I wanted to start a conversation about mental health, whilst I wanted to talk about mental health awareness amongst organisations, actually the work that Mind do is needed now more than ever. And those of you who have heard me speak about my mental health, haven't done that today, but those of you who've heard me speak about my mental health, actually, were it not for the support services that organisations like Mind provide, then, you know, I think we would have really struggled as a family. And if you want to invite me to your organisations to talk about those for a donation to Mind, I'm turning myself into a right mind tart. For a donation to Mind, I will come and tell that story and talk about what the things I've talked about this morning in more detail. But for every £1,000, and we've raised just over £30,000 now, for every £1,000, this is what it enables Mind to do. £1,000 can go a long way. So if you want to support our fundraising, I'll give you a Just Giving link in a minute. If you want to organise any fundraising events that we can support, then we'll happily support you to do that. Just get in touch. But actually, the work that Mind do is needed now more than ever. And so I think it is, if you can see your way clear to organising something in your region or your organisation, you know, I know we ask a lot of you. But if you are, you know, minded to bake a cake and sell it or do whatever, then please get in touch, or, you know, please let us know how we can support you do that. And particularly, you know, given that we've got, I've got children who've gone through lockdown, yours have too, I'm quite sure, doing work in schools to support people to become mentally healthy and have the tools to do that as they grow older, I think is something that we need to focus on. My dad never had that. As a consequence, he had a depressive illness all of his life, and the impact on us as a family was massive. Okay, so moving on, please. So I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you again for all the work you're doing. I want to say thank you for listening. And I want to say thank you in anticipation that hopefully you will be able to help us promote the cause of good mental health in your organisations, and also raise a bit of money for Mind. And finally, I think we've got the slide that says how you can, oh, we've got some quotes, I think, next. If you, yeah, no. So so this is what so we're on 20,820 from the main fundraising group. We've got a couple of other ancillary groups that are running underneath that, which have taken it over to 30 odd £1,000. So I think there's some feedback, I think, from people who are becoming more engaged in that whole mental health agenda around the fundraising and the work that the CIH is doing. I think actually it's really good for the CIH in the same way that they took a real lead on domestic abuse, to do the same with mental health, because we all have mental health, we all have it. And moving on, finally. And there is our Just Giving link there. I'm at Bushbell on Twitter if you want to get in touch with me. The Shine a Light campaign, and there's my LinkedIn in the middle. So anyway you want to contact me, anyway I can support you. I think I've got a bit of time for questions, if that's all right. If you want to, are you going to come back, Bex, and see? Yeah, great, lovely, thank you.
For some reason, they've been in charge of checking questions and things, but there we go. We'll see how we get on. So if anyone has got any questions, please do pop them in the chat. I could see a few people commenting, which was really good, on different things they're doing in their organisations and things. You can also raise your hand if you fancy 5 minutes of fame on the stage. as we do have plenty of time left for questions. I mean, in terms of like your take on it, how have you found it going so far? I appreciate like COVID has been quite difficult, you know, to get out and about and do the fundraising, but do you feel like it is making an impression on people?
The number of people it's really ramped up after the initial kind of COVID, and we all kind of retreated into ourselves and did what we needed to do. I think we had a mental health crisis before COVID. We've got an even bigger one now, and there's beginning to be a real recognition that that is the case around you know, around not just in housing organisations, but I did something to a contractor last week, and thinking about how they deal with mental health is becoming a much bigger issue for them. 2 men a day working in construction, that's construction maintenance, take their own lives. If 2 men a day were dying on building sites, we'd have a national scandal. And there's a real recognition of that, and the number of people now that are inviting me to go and talk to them about the agenda is really beginning to ramp up, because I do think that people recognise, both from their own experience and recognise in thinking about their organisations around them, that this is something that actually it's not going away, it's going to get worse. And if we want to serve our people well and serve our tenants well, we need to take it seriously.
Definitely. That's helpful. Thank you, Mel, for just reminding people as well. Mel, our head of policy, has posted the links to both of the guides that Aileen mentioned. They're in the chat, and we can make sure that they go out in the follow-up email, and the presentation slides will go out afterwards as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mel.
Yeah, very helpful. You see, they're trying to help me out whilst I'm here, trying to bring order to proceedings. So in terms of how things have worked at Grand Union, we've had loads of conversations before about little practical things that you've been doing to try and get people talking about mental health. I know at CIH we've tried to emulate some of that, but you know, what sorts of things have you been doing, particularly during lockdown when you can't physically see people as often as what you'd probably like to try and encourage staff to keep sharing how they're feeling and get help if they need it?
So we use Form Score. If we can send Form Score out to people, it's from an organisation called InsideOut.org. It's how I take care of my mental health, actually. So it's a guy called Rob Stevenson, who lives with a bipolar condition, and he has developed this Form Score thing where you grade yourself 1 to 10. You mark yourself 1 to 10 on 10 different attributes of how you could be feeling. So, are you worried about money? How engaged with your family are you? How motivated do you feel? Have you had enough exercise? What's your diet like? Are you getting sleep? I share my Form Score on our intranet. Sometimes I do it in a blog post, and sometimes I do it on a video. When I do a video, I rarely talk about work. I talk about working at home in lockdown, and we're in a bit more of a lockdown now. I talk about eating too much cheese. Actually, I've swapped that this week for chocolate. So I talk about my kids' Zoom bombing calls. I talk about how we're all feeling, because actually I think if I talk about how I'm feeling, and what invariably happens is that loads of other people then tell me how they're feeling, and what that enables us to do, it's just a bit of a temperature check and a sense check, but it just enables us to feel connected. So we do videos. We've had some really silly stuff on our intranet, like our comms manager photoshopped heads of members of staff onto album covers, and you had to guess what the album cover was. There were some really hilarious photos there, not always flattering of the members of staff concerned. We've had a pets competition. We do regular surveys. We do check-ins. We've got mental health first aiders. We do all of that stuff, but we do it. What we try and do it in a very engaging and very kind way, because I think now is the time for organisational kindness.
Yeah, definitely. And I think especially with how things are at the moment, you know, the chance of second lockdowns, and I know some of you in parts of the world at the moment on the call are in versions of second lockdowns as well. So please do use the resources that Aileen's mentioned, and if there's anything we can do to support as your professional body for you, particularly as members and volunteers, then please do let us know. We'd love to hear your kind of thoughts and feedback on that. A couple of things just coming in the chat here. Bit of feedback on the practical things that you mentioned from Lawrence, which are great. Did you have any reflection on enforcement issues like access for repairs, gas safety checks, etc.? Has Grand Union changed processes there as well?
At the start of our process is kinder and more open, but the end of it, if we need to take enforcement action to comply with the law and keep people safe, then we'll do that. But the start of it is kinder. The start of it is more coaching in its style rather than let us in, or we'll take action. I think, again, it's one of those things that, you know, if people are unwell, they bury their heads in the sand. So making correspondence and not just correspondence, but ways of talking and ways of emailing or messaging or however people contact you, making that kinder gets you, is more successful for you.
Definitely. Hopefully that helps, Lawrence. I'm sure I'm happy to have follow-up conversations as well if you did want to share some ideas on how that's been done. The link to form score, Claire has been a very glamorous assistant for us today, chipping in with different bits and pieces. So thank you, Claire, for that. And Sue just mentioned there, loves the idea of kind of grading and doing things a bit differently with the blogs and things, because, you know, the traditional techniques are what you're told. I think especially when we're all working from home become even more challenging, because you could ask twice or three times, but if you're talking to, you know, on a chat or even on a video call, it's a bit easier for people to hide how they're really feeling, and it's probably worse than how they'd have normally been.
Yeah, especially those members of staff who don't turn their cameras on and are a bit camera shy. You know, that could be because they're camera shy, or it could be because actually they're feeling completely rubbish and they don't want anybody to notice. And, you know, we don't make people at Grand Union talk about their mental health, but people do know who work here that if they're not okay, it's okay to say so, and that they'll get the support that they need. And that's where we kind of set out from, really.
Brilliant. Okay, I don't think we've got any more questions there, but I do have one final question. It's not about the presidential campaign though, but just intrigued, you know, in terms of your journey into becoming president and all the voluntary work you've done with CIH over the years, just how you kind of got into that, what you took from it, and if you've got any words of advice for all of the volunteers that are on the event today about how they can keep progressing that and the value that it can bring to them in their careers and personally as well, probably.
I think so. I think what the work that the CIH done has supported me for, I'm not going to tell you how long, it's far too many years, and I'll show my age. But that's been fundamental. I worked for an employer where CIH was a requirement. I'd kind of like us to get back to that CIH, the CIH being a requirement. I did the old professional qualification, which is very different from the professional standards framework and the work that we are doing now. And for me, what is different about it is it isn't just about, as Gavin said, having a bit of knowledge. It is about how you are and the way you are. And you know, there's lots talked about leadership. Leadership is what you say and what you do. And so doing that from an informed way, from an informed and knowledgeable way, but in a way that it's positive and supportive, I think are the, and being yourself, actually, because everybody else is taken, being yourself, and don't try and be someone else, and don't try and fit in with a culture that doesn't fit you. Finding yourselves a me-sized whole, I think, is the best advice I could give to anybody. That, and worry less, because it's never ever going to be as bad as you think it is.
Amazing, thank you. And who knows, we might have some future presidents in the audience today that, you know, have listened to this and hopefully felt quite inspired to maybe, you know, start thinking about doing that in the future as well.
I hope so. I do hope so.
We start every meeting with WTF, which stands for what's the feeling? That's nice.
I'm going to pinch that, Shan. I'm going to pinch that. Well done.
Any more top tips would be amazing. Gem's loving that as well, definitely. So if anyone has got any stuff that they're doing in their organisations, that all helps us build further guidelines and toolkits for the sector. So please do always share those. You know, you might think that, oh, it's just what we're doing, but we're so grateful for anything we hear from our members. Brilliant. Okay, great. Everyone's loving the WTF, which is good.
I think that's really cool.
So, I think if we haven't got any other questions, I know people's time is precious at the moment. So I think what we'll probably do is look to bring things to a close by bringing Gavin back in a moment. So thank you, Aileen, for coming and joining us and updating us on everything. And thank you for all the hard work that you're doing for us as president. We really appreciate it.
I really appreciate the CIH. You've been amazing. You're an amazing bunch of people. And I am so grateful that you're my professional body. I am so grateful every day that you do what you do and you are what you are.
Thank you. I think a few of us might well up at that in the background. So thank you so much. That means a lot to all of us, I'm sure. And thank you to all of you that are in the audience just from me today, because I won't get a chance to speak again. You know, the membership offer is so reliant on you as volunteers coming together, being so passionate and so committed. And I know it's really difficult at the moment because we're not putting on member events as such and stuff, but all of your insight into what would work for members and our webinar program, our virtual events, and just all of that time and thought that you're still giving up for CIH is just so hugely appreciated by all of us. And we wouldn't be able to do any of this that we do without you. So thank you. So hopefully Gavin is still with us and he'll get put in the virtual limo again, which is what brings you up to stage. It's not quite as glamorous as what I'd hoped for. There we go. Oh, we haven't got Gavin's camera, but oh, there we go. Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to shoot off and leave Gavin to close the event. Thanks again.
Thanks very much, Bex. Thank you, Aileen. That was a brilliant session and properly inspirational as well. Thank you also for the really kind things that you said about CIH. I think Bex is right. Lots of us would have been welling up that. You know, that's, we do the job because we want to support members. So it's good to know that at least some of what we do, we're getting it right. I want to finish just by saying a couple of things. So to repeat the thanks that everybody has already given all of you for being here, so for giving up your time, for the work that you do, for the support that you give to each other and to our members more widely. As I think everybody has said, CIH runs to a very large degree off the volunteer effort that you put in, and we're massively appreciative of it. So thank you for that. I hope today's given you an opportunity just to get a bit of insight into where we are, how we're doing, where we're thinking of going next, hopefully to give you some ideas, to enthuse you, to give you some stuff to think about for the future. Thanks hugely for the feedback that you gave us, for the questions, for the debate. All of that's incredibly useful. We'll take account of all of it. But if you've got any other things you'd like us to know, either about how this event ran or about some things we spoke about today, please do get in touch and let us know. You know, we value the feedback that you give us. You make us better by what you tell us and by how you work with us. So thank you for doing that. Other than that, there's nothing more for me to say than I hope you've had a good morning with us. Thank you for giving up the time. Good luck, stay safe, stay well for the rest of this period, however long it goes on for. We will stay in touch. Thank you for the work that you do, and I look forward to the opportunity to catch up with you again soon in the future. Take care, everybody. Goodbye. Have a good afternoon. Thanks very much. Bye.